So, Dane, how's your week? After you write down the time.
Same old. Nothing special-tacular.
Same shit, different toilet?
Hey, listen, I'm still unblue checked on Twitter, but I'm also uncanceled. So...
Have you paid your $8 yet?
We are. No, I don't think he's doing that right now. He had to pull that back.
Freudian slip there.
Catastrophe.
Oh, boy.
Well, as the only contributor to it, that's why the slip there.
You guys should back this podcast up to the pre-recording so you could hear the conversation.
I actually should lie and say that I'm not the only one that contributes to it, because that way, if we ever get thrown in a gulag for stuff I put on
I've got plausible deniability, bitch.
I need to have plausible deniability that it was you.
You keep saying I'm the one that's going to get us canceled. That's my whole argument.
No, you're going to get us canceled. I'm going to get a CIA black bag.
I'm going to get us stricken. And you are going to get us killed, is what's going to happen. We're going to end up in a field with an extension cord around our necks and a shotgun blast to our chest. And for some reason, you can tell that we committed suicide because of the blood.
Yep.
And the shotgun pattern. Anywho.
I'm willing to accept that.
Okay. Well, if you're willing to get us both killed, then let's go on with 125. So, for the meme destruction portion of this podcast, we're going to go with the Reich is wrong, bitch.
He usually is.
It's my own doing. There's a little finesse on that one. The Culture Corner. We're going to go with Elon suspending lefty journalists. I wonder why.
And are we upset about that, or how do we feel about that?
Let's find out within the cast. Epstein didn't kill himself. Russia's war causes PTSD and they don't take care of it. How dare they?
Because they're the only ones in the history of ever that does that to their soldiers.
Disgusting, if you ask me. And then the main topic, you thought it was all doom and gloom on the WMD podcast? It's fission, not fusion, you fucking dick.
No, it's fusion, not fission.
It's electric! Sorry, I don't. It's not. It's kind of, but
it is a cause for a happy occasion, which is a bit of a departure from our usual "the world is on fire" kind of thing.
So anyway, all that being said, Dane Wise Gamgee, you want to jump into the episode?
Yeah, let's do it. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 125, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/125. You can get it on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the videos on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. You can link up with us on our other socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and then you can also find us in our private members-only group at $5 a month of support on Facebook. Just go over to the website, support our work, $5 a month. We will get that notification, and then we'll send you the invite to the Facebook group. And then the newest addition to the catalog of places to find WMD Podcast is Float, which is, I'm told, never been over there. It is a Facebook competitor, so we're also over there. So with that being said, let's jump right into the meme destroying portion. For those of you who are longtime listeners but maybe missed the last couple episodes, we have a new segment where we are asking our followers, especially the ones that are on Twitter, to send us some of their favorite memes, and we pick one each week and destroy it, because that's kind of what we do here.
It's in the fucking title.
And this week's meme comes from the regular. Well, he's not a regular of the show. He's been on a couple times for saying stupid shit. This one might take the cake in terms of dumbest shit he's said in a while. But it's Robert Reich. And for those of you who don't know, he was the
great silver beard, right?
labor secretary under Clinton, I believe.
Don't look at me.
I believe labor.
Mother liquor.
Might have been something else, but he was in Clinton's cabinet. Anyway, he is an economist who is not very economical with his brain dead takes because he is just giving them out like they're pieces of candy. So anyway, what Reich had to say, and what is today? Is today the 16th?
It would be the 16th day of
December 2022.
In the year of our Lord, 2022.
So 5 days ago, Robert Reich had this to say on Twitter. He said, quote, ExxonMobil raked in $20 billion in profits last quarter and has announced a $50 billion in stock buybacks. Folks, corporate greed is a main driver of inflation, not government spending.
Why didn't he put Pfizer in there?
Well, David, because Pfizer is the corporate corollary to basically Christ himself.
They just did
it's
it
the
for
greatest
humanitarian
thing ever.
reasons, but oil doesn't need to exist because we don't need oil for anything in our lives except for, everything.
That's right. It's these people are so predictable, David. It's just like, you bring up a good point there. The fact that they attack this corporation and not that corporation because this is the low-hanging fruit. Everybody hates the oil companies. How much did you say
they made?
Didn't you see those ducks with oil all over them?
How much did you... Yeah. Look at the ducks! For Christ's sake! These little quackers aren't going to see tomorrow unless we put some fucking Dawn on them. Because of Exxon. But should we put a chemical in our body that we haven't really researched? Yes, of course. It's probably really great for you.
May not have anything to do with that previous...
anything that has anything to do with anything.
I'm just saying. David, you mentioned a corporation earlier, and we're not talking about that because we want this one to go on YouTube. The corporations
existed before 2019, right?
They did.
And how many billions of dollars did they have to pay out in court settlements for harming their people?
We are only talking about that corporation in its
pre-existing, and then skipping 3 years. We're skipping 2019 to 2022. And we're starting on 2022 at the end of 2022.
Yes.
And we're saying that they have a pattern of history of hurting people, but they made a windfall within that span that we're not talking about.
David, all of this is true. However, we haven't even started to destroy the meme, and we're already getting sidetracked.
So sorry. I just care so much about this country.
Just letting you know for the purposes of timekeeping. That's all I'm saying.
Please continue. I got carried away.
Anyway, you might ask yourself, why do people like Reich say stupid shit like this? I mean, there's got to be a reason why it's so... I mean, you could set your watch to it.
Solve the mystery for us all.
And, I mean, the answer is clear. It's clear in the last part of his tweet where he says, a main driver of inflation is not government spending. That's because the Reiches of the world, the people who think that all great things flow from centralized power and the geniuses that staff government and are elected to its offices, their solution to every problem is give government more power. Let government print more money. That'll fix it. That'll solve it. So, of course, they have to blame anything other than the policies that they champion on a daily basis.
Oh.
Is that clear enough for you?
It seems like you solved that case. Now, why do people put videos of themselves shattering glasses in their anal cavity on the internet?
That's...
Or them killing themselves, literally.
Clout is a hell of a drug. I'll say that. People will do a lot of things for clout. Robert Reich will say brain dead shit on Twitter.
There was a follow-up video, Dane. With just soap going in and out. Right. You all know it. I'm not going to explain it to you. You've all seen it. If you're of age. There's a follow-up video, Dane. Where's the follow-up video for this Reich coming out and going, you guys, I'm sorry. I misspoke. We shouldn't give government all the money in the world because when we do that, they only make more problems for us. And then their solution for us is that they need more money to solve the problems they made for us.
Yeah. Now, listen. This whole narrative about corporate greed is the driver of inflation. Again, in the long history of economists coming up with anything other than the actual thing that's causing the problem that they're identifying, this is a new one. This idea that corporate greed is the driver of it. And, it doesn't even pass the laugh test because all you got to do is look around and say, well, I'm pretty sure that before this inflationary period, Reich was also banging the drum about corporate greed. But yet, if I'm to believe that the inflation is just a cause of corporate greed, does that mean that they weren't greedy before? Or does it even mean more than that they just happened to become greedy right at the moment that government, with the cheerleading of people like Reich, decided to print 80% of the dollars that have ever existed in the entire history of the United States within the period of about 18 months? It's very coincidental about when the corporation decided to get greedy.
All I'm saying is that the best and brightest knew to do the thing that we all knew wasn't the thing to do. But they knew better. So we'll wait and see how it works out.
Yeah.
Dane, I feel like we've destroyed that meme. It's kerplump.
Yeah, we did. Other than this last point, is that other than the rhetoric being bullshit, it's just categorically wrong. When you look at, I'll just give you one statistic. There's a myriad of them for why. PPI versus CPI. I knew that was going to get you.
PP.
PPI, the Producer Price Index, and CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. CPI is when you see that big flashy number at the top of the Washington Post that says inflation 7.1, they're talking about CPI. PPI throughout this entire inflationary period has outpaced CPI. So when it was roughly 8% of consumer inflation, there was 10% in producer inflation. So what that means is if the producers are paying more to create the products that you ultimately buy, and their prices are staying at a rate that's higher than what you're paying for the prices, that means that they're not passing all of those additional costs on to you. Their prices are rising, sure, because they have to pass on some of their costs, but they're not even passing along all of it. So this idea that they're just inflating prices arbitrarily and you're having to pay it, and that's the sole driver of inflation, is completely destroyed by the discrepancy between PPI and CPI.
And
there's more reasons, but since this is supposed to be a shorter topic, we won't get into all of them, but I'll link to an article on the show notes page and you can see why Reich is completely and utterly full of shit. But with that, I don't want to steal any more thunder from David's segue.
And I can't wait to listen to that 20 times to fucking understand what you just said. But with that being said, after the culmination of that destruction, you want to move on to the culture corner?
I would love to.
Please, let's do. And that, to remind you, dear listeners, is Elon suspending lefty journalism. Now, what would cause him to do that, Dane? Please.
Well, from their perspective, this is the latest example in their "I told you so" about Elon being a hypocrite when he claims that he was a free speech absolutist, but now look at him canceling all of his and suspending all of his political foes. That's the narrative from them, predictably, but you won't be surprised to learn that it's a little more nuanced than that.
Huh. It's almost as though the champions of freedom, of democracy, of letting everyone choose to do whatever they choose to do and being free to do so, has a problem with somebody that comes in to oversee what they've been doing in the pursuit of said freedom.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rich for them to now get outraged about him, apparently, again, according to them, arbitrarily banning people that disagree with him because that's what they've spent the last 3 years doing.
Let go of the reins of Twitter and handed it off to somebody else. Was there this much strife? Was there this much vitriol with how that with how Jack Dorsey's predecessor would run Twitter? Because that was a big deal. It's handing off a huge
his successor, the one that followed him.
Yeah. Like, we didn't hear about him but for a week maybe less. We heard about him for a little bit. But he had
He made a couple appearances on the show.
He-
Parag Agrawal.
Yeah, no,
I think
he
that's how you
did.
pronounce it.
But was there this much vitriol? Was there this much, like, the government's going to start looking into what he's doing at Twitter?
Oh, of course not. No. Well, because he's not a super rich, evil, no good, very bad billionaire who is the bane of human existence.
That they can't control, right?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, well.
That's what the Twitter
shit's
files are disclosing.
I'd
by the
hate
day.
to put the nail on the nose right there before we even get into it. But please, Dane, suss out the details to make it more digestible for the listener.
So we'll give you Elon's argument for why he did it, and then we'll steelman the other side's argument and say that even under the best circumstances, they're completely full of shit. So Elon's argument for why he did this, and in particular what happened this week, the second or third week of December 2022, is he suspended...
Year of our Lord, Dane. For Christ's sake, year of our Lord.
He suspended a bunch of Twitter accounts of leftist journalists. Now, the people on the left that are outraged about these suspensions will tell you that he did it solely because they're leftists and they were holding him to account and he's just a terrible dictator, wannabe dictator, and that's why he did it. He says, well, as the Twitter terms of service were before he took over and now, you can't dox people. You can't give their actual real life in real time location because there are crazy people out there who might want to do them harm. And so you can't be saying, hey, Elon's over at the Starbucks on 57th and 49th, that you can't do that.
If only there were things that happened that caused murders because of that.
Right. So
XX Tentacion, do you remember that? That was right in our backyard. He accidentally put a photo out that had a geolocation. People rolled up and killed him. No one wanted to cancel Snapchat. No one wanted to cancel Twitter. No one wanted to shut it down. It's causing destruction of lives. Nothing. But please, Dane, go on.
So that is Elon's argument. And even at that, he suspended the accounts for 7 days. He put it to a poll on Twitter and let people vote. Should I let them back now or let them back in 7 days? 7 days, he's going to let them back.
That sounds like
I think it's pretty magnanimous.
That sounds democracy. Does it not?
Yeah, if they have ill intent to put out his information. Now, that's his argument. And I know what you're going to say. And to steelman the other side, they're going to say, yeah, but he said he was a free speech absolutist. And absolutist means absolutist. And he's supposed to let it all go. Okay, fine. Let's run with that for just a second. Let's hold him to that particular rhetoric and say, absolutely. Doesn't matter if his physical safety or that of his family is in danger. He should have let those people stay on Twitter. Okay. Well, first of all, this is coming from the crowd that, as we said, spent the last 3 years arbitrarily banning actual scientists and doctors for saying the no-no words. Not going to say anything more about it than that.
Would never.
Or people like yours truly, not on Twitter, but on YouTube, have been banned for having opinions on subjects or saying things that
we got an appeal.
Weren't approved by the previous, Twitter controllers. So that's rich in and of itself. But what's even more important than that, and what gets lost in this whole narrative of free speech, right, is that there is a vanishingly small Venn diagram of people that truly, truly care about free speech. I would say it's probably an overlapping group of libertarians, classical liberals, and people that consider themselves maybe strict constructionists of the Constitution, that actually care about the Enlightenment ideal, the abstract principle of free speech. Leftists will talk in the terms of caring about free speech, but they never actually really do, because their guiding principle is not free speech, it is power. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were getting ready to write down.
I just had a realization right now.
Yeah,
Holy
go for it.
Fuck. Going back to you remember the thing we always say is when the government comes out and says that this is the Patriot Act, usually it's the antithesis of whatever it says, right? So what free speech requires is that the free speaker can say whatever he wants, but the onus is on the listener. And it's up to the listener to intake what the person is saying, digest it, and come up with their own critical thinking upon what that person is saying. What does that require, Dane? It requires intellect. It requires an onus upon the individual that is hearing it to be able to digest it appropriately, disseminate it appropriately, and come up with the plausible solution appropriately. But what they're saying is that that is beyond what a normal American can do right now. They're saying you're too stupid. Even the Ivy Leagues, even the very educated, college educated that they just try to bail out not a couple of months ago.
A moment ago.
Not
when
a
they
moment
needed
ago.
their votes. When they needed their votes.
They needed their votes. And then they're like, oh, sorry, we couldn't pull it off. Thanks for your votes, though. We'll get it next time. Sorry. So the whole point being is that they're eliminating free speech because they think you're not smart enough to take in the facts that somebody that's very virulently saying the earth is flat, and then a scientist is saying right next to him, here's the
thing that we're not supposed to talk about.
Here's the equation that proves that it's not. And then it's up to you to decide. It's up to you to decide which one is right. So the onus is on you. They want to take that away from you. They want to take choice. They want to take your humanity away from you. What is it Descartes? Man is bound to choice, is damned to choice. Because whenever, I'm sure somebody in the comments or one of our overseers on this podcast will reprimand me roundly for saying this. But anyway, even if you choose not to make a choice, you've made a choice. I.e. Geddy Lee, i.e. Rush. Go fuck yourself. I already pulled it out. Anyway, my whole point being is like, they think you're not equipped enough intellectually for free speech. So we need to wipe that out. We have to tell you what to think because we're smarter than you. We know what's best for you. We have all the plans laid out for you. You'll be fine. And if you're not, we'll never be held accountable for it.
Right.
Minus 2019 to 2022.
Right. And what he's laying out there is, this whole thing about their number one modus operandi, their driving principle, their North Star is getting, and then once it's been gotten, retaining power. That's it. They don't have any high ideals about democracy or equality or free speech or any of these other abstract ideals that some people actually do hold as their particular North Star. And so what I'm getting ready to say is I'm talking to that Venn diagram I mentioned earlier. Libertarians, strict constructionists of the Constitution, classical liberals, those very small groups of people for whom free speech is a principle that is to be pursued at all costs, even for speech that is very uncomfortable to hear, is we have to quit thinking of, and I heard this recently, I'm not going to take credit for it. I don't remember who he was interviewing, but I heard this on the Tom Woods podcast not too long ago, is we have to quit thinking of these people on the left as being hypocrites, right? Because if they were hypocrites, then that would mean that they actually hold the high ideal of free speech and that they violate it when they don't like what somebody has to say. But that's not it. They're not really hypocrites, because they never really believed in free speech in the first place for all of the reasons that David pointed out. The reason why you can't think for yourself and why they need to control everything that you're exposed to is because of power. And Twitter, for better or worse, is probably one of the most important gateways of controlling the narrative, controlling what you're allowed to see and therefore what you're allowed to think. And they lost control of that when Elon took it over. And that has their hair absolutely on fire.
Because they never saw it coming.
That's why they're losing their minds, because they can't leave it, right? Because they know how important it is in terms of how many eyeballs are on it. So they have to stay on it no matter how much they claim they're going to leave it. But what drives them the absolute most insane is not because Elon went against his own principles of being a free speech absolutist, but it's because he took away from them one of the most important arrows in their quiver. One of their most effective aspects or effective tools over narrative control. That's what they're afraid of, because their ideal is power, not free speech, not equality, not fairness, not justice, not democracy, not any of these other flowery words they like to claim. It's always power. Look at the way they act, and that will tell you exactly that that's all they've ever been after.
I really think that the vitriol comes from them never seeing the fact that this could possibly happen. They wanted, how much money did millions of stock traders make off of Facebook going public? Hey, puta madre.
Didn't hit the
You
didn't hit the computer that
cannot
time.
be trusted.
I didn't hit the computer that time.
You
though.
cannot be trusted.
125 episodes. I've only done it twice, but twice in the last 3 or 4 episodes. That's okay. It didn't hit the computer.
Once is an
Continue.
accident.
Twice is a trend.
Thank you.
3 times is a habit.
Yeah.
Haven't hit the 3rd time yet.
Yep. We're going to have to fucking cut you from the roster. Anyway, all I'm saying is that I don't think that they ever foresaw this happening. And then when it happened to them, they made a windfall on Facebook going public, right? Huge. And I fancy a glance at Nancy Pelosi's stock exchange on that particular day. But I think they got caught with their pants down. And that's why they, like you said, lost one of the best arrows in the quiver of their bow when this went down. And that's why they're struggling to, we need to defame it. We need to, what do they do? They never, which tracks back to their modus operandi, is they never debate on the topic. They always just go straight to defamation of character.
Of course. You're a racist, you're a fascist, you're a Nazi, you're
He wants racists and Nazis to be on Twitter. It's like, yeah. Along with all the other people, because it's for everyone.
Yeah.
You fucking idiots. Democracy is for everyone, not just the people that agree with you. Remember when democracy was at stake this last election?
Apparently it is. Every election is the most important of our lifetimes.
And then they won. Well, excuse me. They lost, but they didn't lose as bad as they thought that they were going to.
Yeah.
And they said democracy won. Excuse me, Dane. In the 2020 election, people were boarding up their shops on Main Street. They were boarding up their homes in the premonition that the Trump voters would lose their minds and riot in the streets, which we had seen for the BLM, the peaceful movement. The peaceful movement.
Nobody was under any false pretenses that the boarding up was because Trump was going to lose. It was the other way around. Clearly.
Anywho, all those boards were not nary a stone thrown at them. None of them were checked for their stress factors. And everyone just, however, they will say January 6th, but, yeah. There's things around that. Dane, Culture Corner summed up. You ready to move on?
Yep.
Epstein, Russia's war causes PTSD. How dare they throw their population into the maelstrom like that?
I know it.
And not take care of them afterwards.
I know. And for the first time in human history,
this is the only country that does that, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, excuse me. The only first world country that does that, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent Russia's first world.
Well,
that might be debatable.
No.
Not even
within reason.
Not even casting any shade on that front.
They flip a switch and the light comes on. It's first world,
Okay.
They don't have to pedal on a bike for 20 minutes.
So what we're talking about is an article from the Washington Post, and really the title says it all. It says, quote, Russia sends soldiers to war, but ignores mental trauma they bring home.
Oh,
and
could you
again,
imagine, Dane?
Keep in mind the source, Washington Post, whose tagline is, it gets me every time I see it, democracy dies in darkness. Remember what we just said in the last segment about flowery words that don't mean shit to these people? Yeah, it's in their catchphrase. Democracy dies in darkness. From the Washington Post, who was going to tell you about how those evil, terrible, government bureaucrats over in Russia don't give a lick about their soldiers coming home with mental trauma. And all the while, Washington Post has cheerled pretty much every single U.S. conflict, big and small. If the U.S. regime wanted to go to war and bomb a bunch of poor brown people halfway around the world, the Washington Post was a reliable ally in making sure that they whipping up the opinion of the American people to get behind that. Just absolutely fucking rich from these people to write an article like this.
When did it start? I'd argue it started Vietnam/Korea.
When did what start in particular?
For us not taking care of the people that came home from the atrocities that we sent them to.
I mean, all the way back to World War I was shell shock.
You could, but it was shell shock. When they came back, they still got treatment.
Right. They changed the name to PTSD, but again, the idea of sending people over, sending young, healthy men who have their whole life ahead of them. Back then, now it's men and women, but sending them over there to die, get physically maimed, if not physically, mentally, as this article suggests. Yeah, I mean, it's been time immemorial. And we've known governments don't care about it. It's a very different thing for their media mouthpieces to cheerlead it all along the way.
But the thing is like it's been happening here for ever. Since our predecessors, our parents' time.
Yeah.
And they have the fucking gall to write that article saying that their shit stinks. Meanwhile, they're covered in their own shit.
Yeah.
It's again, not to harp on the issue, not to bring grandfather back into the equation. We know a vet that fought in the Iraq War, which lasted 20 fucking years. How long has the Ukrainian war lasted? Couple of months?
Yeah, since February of this year.
Yeah.
So coming up on a year in the next
20 years. 20 years then, talk to us. But we know a vet that fought in the war, in the early stages of the war too, that he came home after multiple problems during deployment that were recorded, some of them, and he was fighting for his right to healthcare in this country. But the Washington Post has the balls to write this article.
Yeah. While they, before people like him were sent over there, were dutiful purveyors of false information, right? Weapons of mass destruction, to make sure that they could gin up
yellow cake uranium.
To make sure that they could whip up a frenzy in the American public to support whatever it was that the military-industrial complex wanted to do, so that the connected cronies over here could make their money. And the Epstein angle to this particular story is as disgusting as this is, and through the lens of current conflicts, this is nothing new. And the example will go all the way back to World War I. And I'm a big fan of highlighting World War I because, you can't really talk about World War II because of how bad the Nazis were. So like everybody's like, oh yeah, that's one we should have definitely been in.
Just war, as they call it.
Yeah, that's definitely, you can't really get through to people that the Americans had no involvement there. But you can go back to World War I where there was no uniquely evil side of that. That was just traditional, old school European rivalries was all that was. Germany was getting stronger. They wanted to expand their empire.
Like a soccer like a soccer tournament or a football tournament, depending upon where
Germany
you're
wanted to expand their empire along with its allies. And, the traditional powers of Europe, France and Britain, were jealous and didn't want that to happen. And, again, it's just political good old boy shit over in Europe that had nothing at all to do with the United States of America. And yet, what did first of all, what did the Allied powers in World War I do? They went full-scale propaganda to try to convince the American people that those terrible Huns from Germany were just the sight of evil. They ran fake news reports that Germans would walk into a town in Belgium and arbitrarily just go cut off the breasts of all the women. They would take the babies out and, bayonet the babies in their cribs and all of that kind of stuff. These were actual news articles that ran propaganda for the Allied powers to convince the American people to go send their young sons all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to die in a war that they had no involvement in. And there's a hell of a lot of legitimacy to the argument that the United States putting its thumb on the scale in World War I and the Treaty of Versailles that put all of the blame on Germany and created the economic catastrophe that came out of Germany as a result of World War I was the situation that created the environment for the rise of Hitler and the terrible atrocities of World War II. So when you think that we're splitting hairs and being too rough on the Washington Post for being hypocrites about never calling out the American war machine, but always the other guy, remember that this hasn't happened before and it's not going to stop until more people call out this kind of bullshit, which is exactly what we're trying to do.
But think about it, Dane. What would we have done in America over the last 50 years of cinema without the stand-in bad guys being Nazis?
Of course.
Like, this made sense, Dane. Like, both theatrically, both monetarily. The Second World War pulled us out of our monetary doldrums.
According to these dipshits. Completely wrong, but again.
And, I just gotta say, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we killed all those young 18-year-olds and they never got to experience life to the fullest. And that we made a financial profit and wrote us the hero legacy for our country on their backs when they didn't really need to be deployed at all, ever, if we'd have just used our brains and come up with a plausible solution. I don't want to talk about that, but what I do want to say is that I'm super happy that America/USA is number one. USA. Number one.
Its regime is filled with a bunch of wise gray beards that always make the best decisions and
go Halliburton.
Act in the best interest of the American people at all times.
Go ExxonMobil.
Robert Reich is a big fan of ExxonMobil.
Let's go insurance companies that we can't name. Oh, I don't know why. Pfizer, Moderna, let's go.
So, insurance companies?
What's that?
You said insurance companies,
yeah.
And then you mentioned
health insurance. Excuse me, health insurance.
Pharmaceutical companies.
Well, that too.
But those are really good companies who we totally support and love and
absolutely.
Would never say anything bad about. You want to start
sponsoring us? We'll shut the fuck up about you. Give us a fucking cool mill. We'll never mention you again.
Hell, we're cheaper than that.
We'll blame Elon.
Just don't.
Fuck Elon. He's controlling media.
Just don't. Not
like you guys.
Don't cancel us, and we'll be your loyal little lapdogs.
Better to be at the right hand of the devil than in his path, right?
So, indeed. So, on to the main and final segment of episode 125. We have happy news, kind of.
Okay.
I mean, from our typical, the world is on fire, we're ruled by pedophiles and lizard people and all of that kind of stuff.
I haven't said that ever.
Take that as seriously or as sarcastically as you wish, but it is what it is. The happy news today is that scientists have
fission, not fusion.
You said it wrong again, David. It's fusion, not fission.
I thought it was fission, not fusion.
No, we are happy about fusion. Fusion is what happened, not fission. Fission has been happening for a long time. That's bombs and the current nuclear.
I'm a dickhead.
Yes, you are.
Well,
You
we
said it
already
wrong a
knew
couple
that.
times.
So
anyway,
it's fusion, not fission.
Again, I'm not a scientist. So if I mess up some words or don't explain some of these concepts very, very accurately, again, I'm just
listen. Dane isn't Tom Cruise. He's not a Scientologist. He doesn't know exactly what he's talking about. But what we will do as a member of C Corp is try to get to the facts.
So, fission is the process by which nuclear bombs and nuclear power plants create energy. And that, as we know, has some very messy consequences in the terms of nuclear fallout. Sometimes. But fusion, which is the opposite, which is bringing, ions? Yes, bringing ions together as opposed to breaking them apart to release energy, is not only a safer way, because it doesn't come with
What an idea.
It doesn't come with the radioactive baggage that fission does. So if fusion can be made commercially viable in the sense that it can produce a lot of energy, it has the promise of abundant, clean, safe energy to power the world. So to the extent that the climate catastrophists are correct, this is a technology which, again, it has a long way to go to become commercially viable, but could be the sort of silver bullet to human contributions to climate change to any extent that that's a real.
And isn't it just funny how it goes against everything about human nature that we need to destroy to build, that we need to break down to build up?
But this actually
brings together. It takes two opposing ideologies and then binds them together and makes one country, one synergistic atom that creates a multitude of power that gives energy to the entire population that did it, that fused them together.
Right.
If only I could make like a picture or a Venn diagram or something like that would like pertain to America or this country or the world in general that would properly adhere itself to this ideology as though it was even possible. Dane. God knows that's not possible. We can't bring everybody together. It's not like we're all the same race, same species, on the same planet, on the same galaxy, in the same solar sphere, in the same. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I'll get a whiteboard out, Dane. I'll get it out. I'll get it, and I'll start working on it for next episode. Tune in to 126 when I can draw the line between bringing something together and it makes it more powerful, rather than breaking something apart. It makes it super explosive, but just deals in destruction and doesn't bring anything good ever.
Yeah. So that is a brilliant, beautiful metaphor that David's laid out over there.
Dane, I haven't done the math yet. I need the whiteboard.
I have, I don't have. This is from one of the articles we'll link to for this episode. But a good metaphor that explained it to a layman like me, basically what this is. And the writer of the article had this to say, imagine, 10,000 BC, right? You see fire is a very useful thing, but the only way you've ever known to be able to get access to fire is through the randomness of a lightning strike.
Kill a witch.
That you're able to, go harness that for your own purposes later. But then one day you stumble across the idea to rub two sticks together and it gets warm and you think, man, if I do this long enough, I might be able to get fire on command. And that was a revolutionary technology then.
Sounds pretty hot.
And nuclear fusion is a similar revolutionary technology now, because the key breakthrough that happened this past week is creating fusion that produces more energy than it consumes. Up to this point, human beings have not been able to create a fusion reaction where more energy came out of the reaction than was put into it. But this week, using very round numbers, they shot roughly 192 lasers at the thing. I believe it was hydrogen ions that they were trying to fuse into helium ions. And they shot 192 lasers at it, which required about 2 megajoules of energy. And the fusion reaction from that created 3 megajoules of energy. So again, negligible difference, but for the first time in human history, we achieved more energy production than actually required to create the reaction. And for all of the reasons that we stated earlier, this could be a game changer for clean, abundant, safe energy for humankind. And as we all know, energy is a huge part of the human condition in terms of raising the material standard of living for human beings all over the planet. So this is great news. It has a long way to go to be commercially viable. You're not going to start seeing, nuclear fusion plants being built or all over the place tomorrow. But to the extent that this can now be scaled up and that becomes a practical, real, achievable thing, humans have done something great for once.
It's
or for
weird.
A change.
It's weird. It's like, for a change? I like that.
I shouldn't say for once. Humans have done great things for a long time, but
yeah, of course. But
recently, not so much.
Never the humans
this is a
you
good
hear
thing.
about. It's always like in history that you had to point it out. But no, it's a light at the end of the tunnel, because I feel like for a long time we're like, oh, it's just going to be AI, and we're just going to put on our headset and our haptic suit, and we're going to not breed anymore. We're just going to, it's not going to be Terminator, Skynet takes over and destroys the world. It's just going to be that we choose to live in a world that isn't real until we don't exist anymore.
Which all still might happen.
It could. It could.
We'll just have free, clean, abundant energy to run it all.
We won't fuck the planet up anymore while we do that. But no, I mean, that's really, when you start seeing that you can put in 2 things and get out 3 things, that's changing mathematics in and of itself. Because it was always alchemy. You need to put one thing in, one thing out. They both get destroyed, but you get the other thing that comes out. That's alchemy. It's equivalent exchange. Now, it's not equivalent. It's you put 2 things in, you get 3 things out, which flips math on its head for us, which is going to it's not going to be in our lifetime, probably not going to be in your lifetime, but now we start seeing, like, and not to get too extrapolated out, but like when you hear about UFOs or unidentified spacecraft or unidentified craft being able to bend time and space, and they can do crazy things like ascend from 50,000 feet down to 1 and no G-forces and accelerate past our best fighter pilot engines or fighter plane engines, and us not being able to track it. Like that's a sign that, like, maybe, just maybe, we are on the right track to keep evolving, which is good, because it seems like we've been devolving so long in this country. It's like when you see humans just choose comfort and choose just to push off things that they really need to handle, but just choose not to, but it's made acceptable, and we all have to just move forward with it. I'm not saying anybody falls in this category. I'm not giving any categories in this, but now we see progress. This is progress. This is the chance to get away from where we've been going for so long. And you green earthers, you vegans, you climate, I've got to go throw paint on a fucking Van Gogh to make myself feel better about myself, trying to evade global corruption from environmental catastrophe. Shut the fuck up. Stop gluing your hands to a Porsche. We've got the answer. Now start pushing Congress and your senators And wherever you're looking at this from or watching this from, like country-wise, start pushing your government towards that. We have the technology now. We need to accelerate that technology because that is the new era of humanity. That's how we can move past all this minutia about whether or not, I look good enough or sexy enough or I should be accepted for what I am or what I'm not. It's a way out. I see it as a grander scale.
Right. And notwithstanding David's
Go ahead,
accusations towards myself.
I never accused
that I am the, worrywart or the sad sacker on this podcast.
Did I say your name?
Always bring it up.
Did I say your name?
No, not now, but in past episodes. You say it all the time.
You are the Doomslayer.
That I'm always the one trying to bring everybody down.
Not the Doomslayer. He's the Doomsayer.
I am not, I don't focus exclusively, and I think this segment bears this out. I don't focus exclusively on, and this podcast does not focus exclusively on the negativity in the world for the sake of negativity itself. Like, right. We're not nihilists. We're not, dwelling on the darkness because we are more comfortable in the dark. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is saying that there is a lot of darkness in the world and it needs to be called out because light is the best disinfectant. But in addition to that, when we show and talk about how much energy is focused on the darkness, when things like this are also happening in the world, it gives somebody that quiet confidence to know that no matter how bad it is, hope springs eternal. And that is one of the beautiful aspects of the human condition, is no matter how bad it is, as long as humanity has hope, both on an individual and on a macro societal level, there is always something to get up for and move on to the next day with. And even if it's expressed in this, I always come back to this concept of the Pareto efficiency thing, right? Like if you have a business, 80% of your workers create, 20% of your workers create 80% of your problems. But 20% of another 20% also does all of the work for you. So it's like a give and take kind of thing. And yeah, maybe 80% of humanity is creating a lot of the problems. And I would venture to say that most of those are in positions of power and lording it over the rest of us. But there's the 20% out there that are doing amazing things and that are, for better or worse, going to save us from the consequences of the 80%. So here is a cheers, a two hurrahs for that 20%, pushing humanity forward, making sure that hope stays within all of us, because as long as we can have these little wins, it makes all of the bad things kind of a little bit more tolerable. But that doesn't mean we stop talking about the bad things. We just try to celebrate the good while we lessen the bad as much as we humanly possible can do on an individual level.
You know what?
See?
That's nice.
A little happy.
That's nice. Let's end it on that note.
Yeah.
Hey, Dane, where can they find this cheery, upbeat podcast?
You can find this episode at wdpodcast.com/125. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. They can get the videos on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and both at the show notes page, wdpodcast.com/25, and those videos you will see in the description or the show notes, the articles that we talked about. And they can also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. They can support the show at $5 a month and get into that private Facebook page I was talking about. Or they can also join us over on Float. So those are all the places you can find us. Please, 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 please. And thank you for those of you that already do. Like, subscribe, share. Even if you just talk with a couple friends about the podcast, we're still growing. We appreciate your efforts in making that happen. And we hope to, like the last segment of this episode, be part of that 20% that's a little bit more light in the world make your day a little bit better. And hopefully we see you back next week for episode 126.
And until then, dear listeners, viewers, wherever you're at, wherever you are, stay safe. But more importantly, stay free.